just to go over our agenda for today. So you will get an overview of the FOODITY project by our coordinator, Samuel. And then I'm going to be going into a more of a detailed review of the open call, how it's structured, what we're looking for. Then we will have a presentation by our colleague from JIBE, Hans Hoff, who is going to be talking about the data architecture that we've created for this project. And we're going to conclude with a Q&A. So let's go ahead and get into it. I want to, oh, and yeah, of course. So here we are. I'm Nika Levikov. I'm the open call manager. As I said, we have Samuel, who's coordinating, and Hans, who is in charge of the data infrastructure and data management. So I want to hand it over to my colleague Samuel, who will be talking to you about the FOODITY project.
Thank you very much, Nika, and thank you everyone for having joined today's session. I'm really excited about the interest that you've shown in being here today, and I hope that this is a first step in your participation in part of a open call and the beginning of a possible journey of success. So I am Samuel. Good morning again. I will be talking briefly about the FOODITY project, the project that I'm coordinating with Nika by my working with me and a good bunch of partners, which I'll present in just a couple of slides. So we can move on, Nika, if possible. And the way that I normally like to address FOODITY is by putting the people that I talk with in a bit of a reflective state. So this is a slide that I like to use, and then I ask everyone to think about the food, nutrition, and health habits, as well the apps and services you use. All right. So when we go out to dinner, when we open our Fork, let's say, app, when we go to our local market and open up their loyalty program application, and others similarly, question yourself about what data you generate when you do these kind of activities, when you go grocery shopping or when you do exercise. I didn't mention that before, but it's also very important to keep in mind. Like, question yourself about who has access to that data. Are you just giving it to Apple because you have an Apple Watch or a Galaxy Watch, a Samsung Galaxy, or not that I'm trying to promote them in any particular reason, but it's the two main ones that come to mind. But think about that, like, who has access to that data? And do you really have access to the data that you give, after it's uploaded to their servers? And can you use it freely? Can you extract it, send it off somewhere else for a different, to a third-party app? And can you get it easily removed if you wanted to? So if these are the kind of questions that you often think about, that's great. If not, then FOODITY is here to kind of promote that reflection. And I would say you've come to the right place. So keep these questions in mind, not only for today, but when you're moving forward, because this is something that the project is very focused on. And to move on to the next slide, when you keep these questions in mind, if you kind of wrap them up into a set of ideas or the vision that we have for the project, we've kind of identified 4 main aims or areas that we want to tackle. Okay, so we're very conscious that people don't have a large degree of freedom or control of the data that they offer to different types of services and apps. And we want to introduce a shift into that mindset. Okay, we want to put the control of people's food and nutrition data back into their hands. We want to make a big leap forward in that step if possible. Okay, and based on all that data that we collect, or that is being collected, that people, citizens, users, all synonyms, I would say, through that data, slowly and steadily make a contribution towards better and more sustainable food and nutrition systems. One person alone can't, move the world, but collectively there is enough data that is gathered that can make an impact. That's what we believe in. Okay. And then a third point that is very important is that we want people to feel empowered to have control over the data, to not have a feeling that, okay, I'm just giving away my data and so be it. I can see some pretty cool graphs on an application here. I can see my history of everything I've consumed and I can't do anything about that. No, we want people to think differently, to be, proactive, to say that, hey, I should be able to do more with all that data. It's data that is mine, that I've given up, or not that I've given up, but that I've generated. I should be able to do something about that. Okay. And then likewise, be able to understand that data so that they can make better, more informed choices, which kind of feeds into that second point of more sustainable food systems. Okay. And then something very important is I give two good examples, I think, previously about Apple and Samsung. They are very large corporates. They have very closed ecosystems, which makes sometimes it difficult for people to kind of play around with the data that they sort of offer. So we want to jump this barrier, okay, and show that there are possibilities. There are solutions that can be developed that give people, citizens, users, whatever word you want to use, control over their data. Okay, we want to give citizens, and this is sort of like a tagline that we have in the project. We want to give citizens the sovereignty over their personal data, to have full control over the data that they generate. Okay, so these four pillars are very intertwined, and that's how our mission and vision works together. Okay, so through the project, through Foodity, what we're trying to do is show that all these can work together, and we want to create a dynamic ecosystem of tools that enable this empowerment, that enable this sovereignty of food of a citizen's data. Okay, that respect citizens' rights to have control over the data, and that moving forward can make an impact in the food nutrition sector. How do we do that? We have a 2 million pilot development program. Today we're going to be discussing about open call number 1. So that means that we'll have a second open call further down the road. And we'll be, through these 2 open calls, looking for 12 innovative solutions, okay, technological solutions, whether that might be an app or a service, that are data driven. Okay, so data, citizens' data, users' data is very important, but of course, how they play a role in improving food and nutrition, let's say the food and nutritional domain, but equally important, allowing users to have control over their data. Okay, so keep this in mind as a kind of the framework when you're participating in this open call. So next slide. Who we are, just to wrap up, we are a team or consortium of 7 partners, a very multidisciplinary consortium. We focus on technology, data, citizen engagement, social innovation. We have a lot of activities focused on citizen engagement. We really think it's important for people to become more aware of the possibilities associated to data. It's not just about giving away, it's about taking back some control. Okay, we are, as I mentioned, from 7 different countries. So maybe you've heard of us. If not, we encourage you to become involved, not only through the open call, but in the different activities we will have over the course of the next still 2 years plus a couple more until the end of 2023. So I think this was my last slide. We'll have social media handles at the end. We encourage you to get in touch. And again, thank you for having joined, and good luck to everyone that's interested in participating in open call. So Nika, I hand the presentation back to you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Samuel. That was a great introduction to the project. And now I'm going to get into the details of the open call. So our open call has a 2-stage funnel approach. And what we're looking for, as Samuel has just discussed, is innovative solutions that demonstrate the potential for data-driven innovation in food and nutrition. As you can see, we're really interested not just in the technical side of things, but that there is a clear demonstration of social innovation and citizen engagement from start to finish. So we want to see that citizen engagement from phase 1 all the way till the end of the program. In phase 1, this is project implementation. That's where the bulk of the grant is coming in at a maximum of 150K. We will select 6 pilots, and this is broken down into 3 stages. We have specification and design, implementation, and validation. So this is when you're really developing your business model, and also you're going to be defining your KPIs in more detail with mentors that we're onboarding into the project, and refining also and detailing your citizen engagement activities. In phase 2, this is important. We are selecting 3 of the 6 pilots to move on to this phase with a maximum of 30K in the grant. And this is 2 stages: pilot, testing, and business sustainability. So this is focusing on impact and taking your product to market. And then we're concluding with the FOODITY Star Award. So the pilots in this phase will have the opportunity to pitch in a live event to a jury and win an additional 7.5K. Who are we looking for? As you can see here, we have different target groups. We're looking at SMEs, who will likely be driving the technical side of things, research and technology organizations and universities that are conducting research in innovation in the areas of food and nutrition. We're looking at social innovation actors. This can take the form of NGOs, citizen associations, but we also understand that this can be companies and training organizations that are providing training for careers in the food industry. What does the consortia look like? You can be a minimum of 2 partners, maximum of 3. In the case that your consortia is made up of 2 partners, you can be 2 SMEs. However, if you're developing a consortium of 3, the third one cannot be an SME. It needs to be an RTO, a training organization, or a social innovation actor. Again, we understand that social innovation actors can also be a company. So you might develop a consortium where you have 2 SMEs and one of them is bringing the social innovation. But the key takeaway here is that we're looking at multidisciplinary teams. It's important to understand that if you are going to have a very technical solution, and for the purposes of making a point, I'm going to use an app as an example here. So if you have an app, it might be really great in terms of having a very clear way of collecting data and a very clear goal in terms of maybe you are providing nutritional advice so people can make better food choices. But when it comes to the social innovation aspect and also the citizen engagement aspect, who are your target groups? How are you going to engage them at the beginning? How are they going to be a part of providing feedback in the design of your application? These are really important things to consider. So we are taking this quite seriously. It's really important to make sure that you have a team that has the capacity to bring in all these different aspects. The scope of the solution. So what are we looking for? You can see here that we have 3 main areas that we're interested in. Of course, in themselves, they are quite broad, but then we also have what we're calling an open challenge. So the first one is food and nutrition personalization. Then we have food sustainability and shopping experiences. We are going to be funding at least 1 pilot or at least 1 pilot per area. So we want 1 project that will be focusing on food and nutrition, 1 on food sustainability, 1 on shopping experiences at the minimum. We will also, we're also open to the open challenge, meaning you might have a solution in an area that we haven't even thought of, as long as it aligns with the overall scope of the FOODITY project and the vision. We are really happy to see what you're offering. And another important point, which I'll be talking about later, is the components. We have 5 different components, and we will be funding a minimum of 3 projects that incorporate at minimum 1 of the 5 components, but you can incorporate more. All of the proposals must be using the data lake and the data U. So Hans will be speaking about this in more detail later, so I'm not going to get into that now. When it comes to the evaluation, we have broken this down into 4 key areas. The concept and challenge. So I think it goes without saying that your proposal needs to be aligned with the FOODITY project and our core objectives. The challenge that you want to address needs to be clearly explained. Impact and innovation. We want to understand what is the impact of your solution. This includes both short-term impact and long-term. We understand that you might not have the details, perhaps, of the long-term vision figured out, and we will work with you on this at the start of the pilot program, but we need to see that you've been thinking about this, also to show how your solution is fitting into the wider food system. And of course, it needs to be innovative, and talking about innovation from the perspective of data management and sustainable food systems. when it comes to data rights and citizen engagement, how are you going to be guaranteeing citizens' data rights? We really want to transition into a world where data is being managed in an appropriate way, ethically, where citizens are aware of how they generate data, for example, when they are interacting with an application or when they are buying something. So not just this, but also citizen engagement, as I mentioned earlier, from start to finish. We would like to see at minimum one citizen engagement activity proposed in your application. And again, we understand that this is not easy. We will be supporting you in this. So the activities will be defined in more detail at the start of the pilot program. But again, we want to see that you've already been thinking about this. When it comes to team and implementation, perhaps another obvious point, we need to see that your team is diverse, that it has the capacity to bring in the technical aspect, the social innovation, and the citizen engagement. So make sure that you've explained that clearly. We want to see some proposed KPIs for your project as well. This will, like the citizen engagement activities, we will work with you to refine and detail these KPIs at the start of the program. So don't be scared that we're expecting to see something final in your proposal, but just to indicate that you've thought this through. Each proposal is going to be evaluated by 2 expert external evaluators. We will be running an expression of interest for these evaluators in the near future. The criteria is scored from 1 to 5, and the threshold is 3 points. Here's a little sneak peek at what the application looks like on the F6S platform. You need to apply through our platform. If you don't have a profile on F6S already, we encourage you to set this up as is necessary to submit the application. You can see here it's relatively straightforward, the application on our platform, and then you will upload a PDF proposal with this. And here is also a look at the proposal that you're going to be submitting. We have broken it down into the 4 different evaluation criteria, but also you will be asked to write about how you plan to manage your data. Although a lot of the data will be stored in the data lake, it's also important that you show that you've been thinking about how you are going to manage any personal data that you'll be collecting, especially if there are identifying characteristics per individual. And here is a timeline for the pilot program as a whole. You may be aware that our open call is open now. It opened on the 5th of September. It'll be closing on the 8th of November at 5 p.m. CET. This is a strict deadline, and the platform will automatically close at this time. So make sure that you do submit on time. We will have almost 2 months to evaluate, select the winning proposals, and then those winning pilots will be signing a contract with us, and the acceleration program will begin in January of next year and run for 1 year total. So what are we offering you in this program? Obviously, we're all a fan of money, and this is quite a big grant. There's an opportunity to be awarded 187,000 K almost. But in addition to that, we are offering access to technology so we can support you in the services you may need to further develop your solutions. We're going to be offering expert mentoring, which I will talk about shortly. There will be group coaching as well as technical training according to your specific needs. So this is a very tailored program. We're going to work with you to understand what your specific needs are and interests and make sure that we are helping you to scale. The components, we have 5 different components. The first one is food recognition from photos. Then we have food production identification from photos, personalized nutrition plan, personalized support for nutrition and physical activity, and nutrition and activity ontology. So these components have different software and coding depending on which one. For example, in the first one, there's an AI software that identifies food from photos. Another one uses a Python script. If you go to our technical annex 1.1, you can read about these components in more detail, and all of them have been tested, validated, and are licensed. And a link to the license agreement is in the annex, so please take a look at that. A reminder that we are looking for a minimum of 3 proposals that will incorporate one of these components, but you are welcome to use more than one. Here's a little sneak peek at what our mentoring will look like. You can see that there are a variety of training topics, but these are not set in stone. As I've said, it's a very tailored program. So if there's a training you need that is outside of these listed topics, we will surely do our best to provide that for you. Our mentors, like our evaluators, will be recruited through an expression of interest. So I cannot tell you the names because we have not onboarded them yet, but they will be providing support and guidance throughout the FOODITY program, and they will be working with you to refine your KPIs pertaining to your pilot as a whole, but they will also work with you to develop specific KPIs regarding to the technical and business side of your solution. As you can see with our training topics, we are looking at all different aspects when it comes to really bringing your solution successfully to market and ensuring sustainability. Things like personal data sovereignty, also working with you to ensure that we're promoting citizen awareness and getting citizens to understand how their data is used. Even things like financing, innovation, strategy, marketing and branding, which is quite essential as well for any business. And let's take a step back and look at the overall key aspects of this open call. So the timeline, as I said, we are closing on the 8th of November at 5 p.m. CET. The consortium that we're looking for is going to be 2 to 3 entities, which must be led by an SME. As a reminder, we're really looking closely at the social innovation aspect. So one of the consortium members must demonstrate their expertise to bring in that social innovation and the citizen engagement. And the third member, if you have a consortium of 3, must be a non-SME. That means civil society organization and NGO. If you have a consortium of just 2 partners, both of them can be SMEs. The scope, we're looking for data-driven solutions in food and nutrition domains, and it's essential that there's a respect of personal data sovereignty. Something I have not mentioned yet is TRL. The minimum TRL to enter this program is 4, so we're looking at TRL 4 to 6. If you are lower than that, you are automatically not eligible. So make sure that you have the minimum TRL and scaling to 7 in this program. It's not a requirement, but this is what we are hoping to achieve. Please do follow us on LinkedIn and X if you're not already. And matchmaking. We understand, especially if you're coming from the technical side, that it might be difficult to find a social innovation actor. So we really want to help you in this process. We've designed a very short application. You have the link here. You can tell us about the expertise and what you're missing. I've listed the categories here where you can select what you need and what you have, but also if you have another area of expertise or another area that you're looking for, you can put this in the application. We will do our best to match you with the right partner. With enough interest, we will be running an online matchmaking event on the 11th of October. So again, follow us online so you can be updated on announcements regarding this. But it's also important to note that we cannot guarantee you a match, okay? Some final considerations and tips. Please do read our guidelines carefully. They are very detailed. They have all the information that you need about what we're expecting on eligibility and the program itself. Double check that you have any conflict of interest, for example, a link to a FOODITY beneficiary. Also bear in mind that as an entity, you cannot participate in more than one proposal, even if you are not the lead partner. Be clear and specific. You may know your solution very well, but the evaluator does not. So don't assume and make sure that you're explaining everything in detail. All proposals must be submitted exclusively via the F6S platform in English. We're not going to be accepting anything by email. And get started now and try to submit ahead of the deadline. Here's some relevant links for you. You can, of course, read more about the project on our website. We have a dedicated page for the open call. We also have a link for the application on F6S. There's a discussion forum as well if you want to continue dialogue. If you're having issues on the F-Success platform, you can contact our support team directly, support@fsuccess.com. If you have additional questions after this webinar, you can contact us at opencalls@foodity.eu and another link to our matchmaking service. So thank you so much. I want to now hand it over to Hans to speak more about the data lake and DataU.
Thank you, Nika. Thank you very much. I hope you, well, I see that I still have to unlock. Oh, I cannot start my video, so you have to do it with my name. So my name is Hans Hauf, active in this project, and I have to share my screen. Let me see whether that works. Yeah. I hope it is visible now.
It looks good, Hans.
Looks good. Okay. So, well, an introduction to DataU and the data lake. I do that in 5 steps. First, tell a little bit about what is open data, personal data, and sensitive data. Then I'll use some use case samples. Then my colleague VRL will tell you a little bit about the architecture behind DataU. And also explain about the software development kit, which should allow you to connect to this DataU platform. And last but not least, I will tell you something about the data lake and the collection of data we would like to gain from this project in such a form that it can be used as open data for future research. Just a little bit overview. A little bit more technical than the overview which Samuel gave. So on one side, on the top side, you see the food production and logistic value chain. There are many organizations active, and in the end, they produce food for everyone. So the orange figure on the right side is the citizen, the end consumer of the food produced. From this whole food and production and logical value chain, there's a lot of data which has to be shared, can be shared with the building blocks, which we was just showed by Nika. Here are the open calls and the applications which we expect from you to write. And in the end, some of the data from your applications, they will lead into data in the FOODITY data lake that can be used as public data for all kind of analytic purposes. And as such, also let's say each of the open calls, they have to use data somehow from the people, the end users, the citizens, or they have to use data from the food, let's say, value chain. When this data is let's say, sensitive or very personal, at that stage, you need to have an explicit consent to share this data and to use this data in your application from the owner of the data. And for that, we have a tool which is called DataU. And I will zoom a little bit into that. So just to well, let's say, share a few definitions. A data subject is and that comes from the GDPR law. A data subject is, I call it, the data owner. And a data processor is a service, a data service that handles, stores, and analyzes this data. So if you have on one side data processors and on the other side data subjects, owners, these owners of this data can be individuals and can also be organizations and people in these organizations. So if this data which you want as a data processor, because you will develop somehow a data processor in this project, if it is only public data which is already publicly available, then it's free to share between the entities, between the parties. So there is no restriction. But at the moment it is sensitive data or personal data, and it can be sensitive data from an organization, yeah, then you need explicit consent to share that that data and ask this data from the organization or from the individual or from, let's say, other data processors who store that information from them. So in that case, you have to use DataU. And for that, you have a consent, I call it a consent platform, where you explicitly ask the consent to share data. You have to explicitly say, this data I'm going to share. And these are the conditions. This, the GDPR law is a condition, or some kind of NDA contract between the parties is the condition under which you share this, this data. An example, just to have it a bit more clear. So the first slide here, the first picture here is a screen of your application. It can be on a phone or a smartphone or on in an application. But you ask from a user, third party, what is your date of birth, what is your weight, and what is your height. And then, because this is personal data connected to the person, you have to ask consent. If this person is already registered in DataU, you directly jump to the last consent screen, and then services X, the first service, ask for date of birth, weight, and height. You say, I give consent, and then, for instance, from another data processor, the weight is shared. From another data processor, date of birth, for instance, who stores also your birth certificate, the data is shared from that other service. And the same is your height can also be part of that, and it will be shared to the original, let's say, service provider who asked this information to do their services. Then when, let's say, the citizen or the user of the data subject is not registered in the FOODITY DataU platform, then we first have to register them to ensure that we talk all about the same person. A similar construction is possible when it is not about, when it is sensitive data which is shared. I will not go into the details, but you can imagine that it is exactly the same step. And then I'll give now, because I have only a few minutes left, the floor to my colleague, Cosmin. Maybe you can enter now. If there is, I cannot see this, I cannot see you, so I don't know whether my colleague is joining, but it seems not. So
Cosmin's on the call, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't hear him.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Hi, Cosmin.
Hi. So, yeah, this is the overview of the Data EU platform. We have multiple services here, and I will start talking about the dashboard view. The dashboard view is just like its name. It's a dashboard where the user can manage all his permissions. So the dashboard view is connected to an identity provider, which provides the user with authentication and authorization. And then the user is connected to a data processor to which he will share the data. And the data processor will talk with the blockchain network and will add the permission transactions on the network that will basically store the source of truth of the state of the permissions. And yeah, basically this is it. We also have some different nodes in the blockchain network. We have two kind of nodes, and that's because we want to make it more scalable in the future and basically separate different sectors with these topping nodes and the main nodes.
But Cosmin, I think this this is not so important for all the developers. So the data processors they will get their direct way how to connect to this system and how it will work for them. And that's, I think, presented in the next slide.
Yeah. Okay, so here I am. Here we have some details about the SDK that you will use to integrate with the DataU platform. It's basically a library that enables the developer to integrate with the proxy service from the DataU platform, and it allows to query the current permission state of a data subject and also to exchange data. The API supports requests like retrieving some data from a data processor, um, correlate a data processor with a data subject, because this is basically the initial thing that needs to be done. Create a permission request that will be eventually sent to the user to accept or deny if he doesn't want to share the information, and also to register a document in the platform, which will be in the future referred as terms and conditions for that shared data. Okay, and another type of requests are some events that updates the data in the platform or on the data processors systems, and also to remove the data if that's the case.
Okay.
Yeah. And in the next slide, we have an overview of how the SDK talks with the proxy instance, which will be on the data processor's premises. And yeah, we have the dashboard, which is connected to the IDU, and also the data processor backend that uses the SDK.
So possibly everybody knows SDK is a software development kit, which is in fact a piece of software which is written in at this stage we have it in Java or in Go, and you can implement that into your piece of software in order to connect it with your let's say application.
Yeah.
Okay. Then let me thank you very much, Cosmin. I think I now take it over to the data lake. So the data lake developed by our colleagues from SoftTeam. The main goal is that data which is let's say that we create a data lake which can be used for all kind of research purposes. It will be so we will share person-related data or food-related data in that data lake. We have to ensure that that all the data in this data lake is public available, and it has let's say it respects the GDPR law. And what we try to do is also to create an architecture which in which you can use also this data lake. There are two scenarios which I like to see. One is the data provider scenario. In this case, let's say a company or an organization connects. I will not go into detail because I think you can see this yourself, but you see it is a whole logical stream how you can upload information and data in the data lake. And what is crucial is the question, you want to update your profile, you want to upload a new data set, upload an existing data set, download a data set, or unsubscribe. But once you want to upload a new data set into this data lake, they ask whether it contains sensitive or personal data. If not, then you can just directly connect it to the data lake. If yes, then you refer to DataU to ensure that the let's say consent is given to share this data in a certain way. In a similar way, also this data lake is open to citizens, because we think that once you have openness of data, then the trust in the data services is also let's say growing from the citizen side. So here also the citizen has the possibility to access the public data, to visualize it, to search for data, or to even manage their own data. But if it's their own data, then they're also redirected to DataU to ensure that whatever they upload into this data lake, that it is that they give their consent to do that. In a little bit, let's say, architecture view, we have the data providers, the data subjects. We have the front end, which is the way we experience and get access to the data. The back end, on one side, we have here the data processors with ProxyU, the NodeU, and the DataU, as was just explained by Cosmin. And well, in the end, we have all kind of tools to analyze the data in a different way. And then I think that gives the total overview from, let's say, what is the data sharing platform, DataU, and what is, let's say, the data lake about. Thank you very much. And I give you the floor back to Nika.
Thank you so much, Hans, and also to Cosmin for the presentation. We're going to open the floor now for questions. There's already some questions in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and share. Hans, if you can stop sharing your screen, I'm going to go ahead and share one of my slides again. Okay. I just wanted to put the links back up for you, just to so you have those. And let's see about the questions. So, the first one: can partners be part of the partners from the consortium be from the same country or international? It doesn't matter. The key is to have a multidisciplinary team that has expertise in all of the areas that we've talked about. So this can be from one country, this can be from multiple countries, as long as the countries themselves are eligible. And can a consortium be composed of 2 RTOs that is no SME? Unfortunately not. The lead partner must be an SME. Okay, is there a multinational dimension? So I think I've just answered that. Is this for scalability or redundancy? I'm not sure I understand this question. Maybe Samuel can help out.
Yeah, Nika, I saw the question as well, but it came when we were discussing the data lake, so I'm not sure. It's a bit specific, but not very clear what the question is trying to get at. But maybe just to complement my answer, if recognizing that the data lake, the DataU might be a bit more complex and there might be questions, please take note of the email that you have here on your link, opencalls@foodity.eu. If there's a more specific thing that you'd like to know more about that is not in the Annex 1.1, do reach out and we'll try to get that answered for you as well.
Thank you. Is it possible to get this presentation via email? So this is recorded and we will be providing the recording soon, and you can definitely stay in touch via our social media channels. Also, we have a newsletter you can subscribe to, so you'll be notified when it's available. Develop solutions for Open Call 1. We'll use data that will be available via the data lake. I'm going to let Hans answer this question.
Let's say not all data. We try to let's say to stimulate that as much as possible data will go to the data lake for future use. But we can imagine that some of the applications will have data which stays personal and cannot go into the data lake. So That's why we try to push yes, so it will be available, but when in certain cases it will not be necessary, not be possible. So that's I think my answer. I hope it covers it.
Thank you. Can a university be a partner? Absolutely. This falls under research and technology organizations. Just take note, as I've said earlier, that the lead partner must be an SME. Okay, we have a few questions from Maria. Thank you. I think I've already answered the first question. Is it considered positive if you're from different countries? Once again, the emphasis is on the multidisciplinarity aspect. So if you have a team that is all from Spain, for example, but you have a great diverse team with a lot expertise in the different areas that we're looking for, that is what's going to be considered a strength. It's not about where you're based, again, as long as it's an eligible country. Maximum and minimum percentage for each partner in the budgets. What is the allowed range of funding per partner? So the maximum you can get is 187,000 K, but this is including the FOODITY award of 7.5 K. The maximum budget, so you should design your budgets according to what's allotted for each phase. The maximum for phase 1 is 150K. The maximum for phase 2 is 30K. So again, your budgets should be designed to illustrate if you need 150 in phase 1, then you need to clearly break down the budget to justify why you're asking for that amount. And of course, you can't go over that. Could a proposal be submitted with wine as the main theme? That's an interesting one, as we are looking for data-driven solutions. So if your solution is data-driven, but maybe I'm going back to app as an example because it's the easiest one for me as a non-technical person. If you have an app that is able to analyze the quality of different wines, let's say in the European region, and maybe it's helping people to, I mean, not that alcohol is healthy for you, but maybe it's allowing people to understand the difference between a wine with sulfates and a wine without. That could be a solution that works. But the point is that it has to be data-driven, and so the emphasis is on that and not the, let's say, food group. So I hope that answers your question. What costs can be covered by the grant? I'm also going to let Samuel answer this one.
Yeah, thanks, Nika. Actually, just to complement the previous question from Maria, there's a part on maximum budget per partner. There is nothing specific about if partner X can have 50,000 of the 150, or if it's 100,000, divided by 2. Basically how much you should distribute. I think it should be allocated based on what value each partner brings to the table. So being a consortium, I would assume that it's distributed in a way that respects each partner's effort. So long story short, no maximum or minimum defined per partner in a consortium. Going to the costs covered by the grant, mainly the typicals in these types of projects, Horizon Europe, or financial support to third-party projects. So human resources or personnel costs, obviously, we would consider that those to be the main. Other direct costs related to travel, if necessary, especially if you're going to be a multi-country partnership, would be okay. If there are activities that you need to involve citizens, then you might want to organize an event. So saving some of your budget to organize that kind of event, citizen-focused, would make sense. Okay. If you need some kind of technical resources to implement your project, then that would be feasible as well. Just keep in mind that you should describe those, and keep in mind that depreciation costs are what we would expect you to present as part of your proposals, not the full, not a full computer, but only the value that you're using within the 12-month period of the project. And also keep in mind that indirect costs are 25% of the total budget. So more or less standard, let's say, rules apply in this open call as well. Back to you, Nika.
Thanks, Samuel. Okay, we have a question about eligible countries. So this is a really good one. Of course, if you are in the EU, you are eligible. But also bear in mind that your company must be registered in the EU, okay? Also, Horizon Europe associated countries are eligible, and low to middle income low to middle income countries. There is a precise list if you search for eligibility for Horizon Europe programs, and I unfortunately don't have all the countries memorized, but as a general rule of thumb, we are focused on Europe. Can user data also be about the good supply chain, like tomato yield and sales price? I would say yes, because again, we are looking at food systems. The second focus area or thematic area is on sustainable food systems. So this definitely includes the supply chain. Question from Simon, are there some limitations on SME size regarding capital equity? That's an interesting one. I'm going to throw that back at Samuel again.
Thanks, Nika. Yeah, so for SME, standard European rules apply. Okay, so that would mean, if I'm not mistaken, the 250 person cap, then there's a limitation in terms of turnover and something else, which I confess that I don't recall. But if you look for the European definition of SMEs, then that's what we are considering. Okay, there's three criteria, that main criteria for SME definition. But then keep in mind something very important. If you are an SME owned by a larger organization, in part in a percentage which I think might be as low as 25%, and then you're actually an SME embedded within the mother company, and that adds to these limitations. So you're not in fact just a 25-person organization, you might be 500 or so. So keep in mind, there's details on all these aspects. Have a look, for example, in Annex 5 or 6, there's information about SME declaration. That's something that you'll have to sign. So there's more details about how we define an SME and what you'll have to sort of sign up for. Okay, so be very cautious about that. There's been many cases where some organizations haven't been able to, move forward in the process because they were not aware of that detail. Okay, but just to summarize very quickly, if you're a 100-person enterprise making a profit of 2 million euros a year or so forth, that should be okay. And if you're not linked to anyone else, then you'd be a perfect fit, just to give you let's say, an easy answer.
Thank you. And we have another question about the solution. What about food product images, photos we want to analyze, where they must be stored? Well, I understand that as a method, but I'm not understanding what the proposed solution is. So if you are, I would need to better understand why you want to analyze these images. What is the benefit for your end user? If there is a solution for the end user in this analysis, I would say that that's viable, but I need more information to be able to properly answer that question. And we have, I think there was somebody else who had a hand raised, but I'm not seeing it anymore. Yes. Okay. Please. AK.
Hi, ma'am. Hi, ma'am. My question is, India, I'm based in India, so I already have a solution. So that's more into ecology I have developed around Indian farmers and food chain. So supply chain, which is including logistics, production, its quality from the farm itself to the farmer to the market and everything. So would I be eligible to submit the same for this project, or do I need to have something specific created for you? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'm not sure that India falls under an associated country. Do you know off the top of your head, Samuel?
Yeah, I caught that point from our guest, and I do not believe that India is one of the low and middle income countries that would be eligible to participate in the open call, AK. So please keep that in mind, that we don't want people to be putting an effort and then not making the evaluation round. So you might feel free to reach out to us at opencalls@foodity.eu, and we'll get back to you with a more solid answer so that we're not providing anything that is misleading at the moment, if that's okay.
Thank you.
That would be the best. Thank you.
Okay, so we've had some great questions. Are there any other questions?
I think there was one more a couple more that.
Oh, yes, we have. Oh, sorry, I'm scrolling down. I didn't see. Thank you. Okay, we're a food delivery company with an application for an order procedure. We just started to develop a data-driven application, but it's not TRL4. Unfortunately, we're going to have to be strict on this, and you have to be at TRL4 when you apply. But we are going to be running a second open call. So if you are able to advance to that level by the time we run our second open call, keep an eye out, and maybe you can apply for that one. There's a comment from an anonymous person. Yes, define nutrition for food products. I don't believe that's a question.
Might be an answer to your previous answer. I think it's all related.
Okay. Can a consortium composed of 2 RTOs apply? So I did answer this already, and unfortunately, no. If you are just a consortium of 2, one of them needs to be an SME because the lead applicant must be an SME. If you are a consortium of 2 and you really want to apply, I suggest that you find an SME to partner with, but bear in mind then they would have to be leading the application. So the SME to get okay, a question from Maria. I'm not clear on. Samuel, maybe you can help out.
I think it might have to do with how much funding you get. Normally, like in Horizon Europe, Horizon 2020, SMEs only got 70% funding. That might be the issue. If that might be related to the question. If so, there is no, let's say, percentage cap. The point to keep in mind is your budget of potentially 187,500 euros, that can be divided between the 2 or 3 partners as you see fit, depending on the type of activities that you're going to develop within the program, within the project, I would say. So if the bulk of the activities is technical development, then it might be normal that 60, 70, 80% of the effort of the total budget be allocated to, the lead entity that is developing. So there is no specific percentage limitations in terms of the budget. That's an internal agreement that you will have between the 2 or 3 partners on how you distribute the budget, and then you'll put that as part of your consortium agreement / the declaration of honor that you'll have to sign as part of the, let's say, the administrative process if you are selected. That's all.
Okay, I think Samuel, you've answered the last question well. Thank you so much for that. Are there any other questions? We're just slightly over time now. Yes. So whoever has to leave, I want to just thank you now for attending, but I'm happy to keep going to answer these. So we have a solution in place for 2.5 years and constantly developing. Is it possible doing such a project supported by FOODITY with a new region to go with our solution for their upcoming business development? That's interesting. I think I will have to ask Samuel again to intervene on this one.
Yeah, I was rereading the question, and I think it's a complex question to provide you a specific answer on the spot. It might be one of those situations where it might be preferable to reach out to us at the email, and maybe Nika, you can take a slide backwards just to provide it again, and maybe provide us a bit more context, because again, we're here to answer as best possible those more straightforward questions. Some of these are very project specific, and we don't want to provide anything misleading at this moment. So it's best to reach out to us directly. Thank you for the question.
Okay, I'm just going to give it a couple more seconds in case there's some other last minute questions coming in. All right. So I want to thank you all again for participating, for the excellent questions, and for your interest. We really look forward to seeing your applications. Please do get started as soon as you can. And a reminder to fill out the matchmaking application if you're looking to develop a consortium. As in if you need help with that, because we will only be running this online matchmaking event if we have enough interest to do so. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and conclude the webinar. I want to thank Samuel and Hans again for your presentations, and we'll hopefully get your applications in soon.
Thank you, Nika. Thank you, everyone.